You know, they say you never really know someone until they show you who they truly are. I learned that lesson the hardest way possible when my own son invited me to his vow renewal ceremony. There I was thinking he wanted to share a special moment with his mother after years of distance between us. But what he really wanted was to humiliate me in front of 200 guests. What he didn't know was that I'd be arriving with someone he never saw coming. Someone whose presence would turn his perfect day into the most uncomfortable afternoon of his entire life. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. Before I tell you what happened next, I'd love to know, where are you watching this from right now? What time is it where you are? Drop a comment below and let me know. And if you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button, share it with someone who might relate, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. Now back to 6 weeks before everything fell apart. I was sitting in my small apartment in Portland, folding laundry when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I hadn't seen in almost 3 years. My son, Marcus. My heart jumped. We'd been estranged since his wedding to Vanessa. She'd never liked me much, and after they got married, the distance between us grew into a chasm I didn't know how to cross. Every attempt I made to reach out was met with short responses or ignored altogether. Birthday cards went unacknowledged. Holiday invitations were declined. I'd slowly accepted that I'd lost my son to a woman who saw me as competition rather than family. So when his name appeared on my screen, I answered before the second ring. Marcus. My voice came out more eager than I intended. Hey, Mom. His tone was casual, almost too casual, like he was calling about something mundane. How are you? I'm good, sweetheart. I'm so glad you called. How are you and Vanessa? We're great, actually, really great. That's why I'm calling. We're having a vow renewal ceremony, 10 years married. Can you believe it? 10 years. Time had flown by in the most painful way possible. 10 years of barely seeing my son. 10 years of missing holidays and birthdays and ordinary Tuesday evenings. Wow, Marcus, that's wonderful. Congratulations. Yeah, so the ceremony is in 6 weeks. We're doing it at the Riverside Estate. Big event, about 200 guests, and we want you there. I felt tears spring to my eyes. After 3 years of silence, he was inviting me to something important. He wanted me there. Of course I'll be there. Thank you for inviting me, Marcus. This means so much to me. Great. Mom, there's something else. Vanessa's parents are hosting. They're paying for everything. It's going to be really fancy. Black tie event. I just want you to know, so you can dress appropriately. I swallowed hard. I knew what he was really saying. Don't embarrass us. Don't show up looking like you can't afford to be there. I'd been working as a school librarian for 30 years before retiring 2 years ago. My pension was modest. I lived in a small 1-bedroom apartment and drove a 15-year-old Honda. I wasn't poor, but I certainly wasn't wealthy either. Vanessa's family, on the other hand, owned a chain of luxury car dealerships. They had money, the kind of money that made people like me invisible. I understand. I'll make sure I dress appropriately. Good. So we'll see you there. 6 weeks. September 23rd at 4 in the afternoon. I'll be there. I love you, Marcus. Yeah. See you then. He hung up without saying it back. I sat there holding the phone, feeling that familiar ache in my chest, but I pushed it down. He'd invited me. That was what mattered. This could be the beginning of rebuilding our relationship. I had 6 weeks to prepare, 6 weeks to find the perfect outfit, 6 weeks to imagine how I'd walk into that ceremony and finally reconnect with my son. I had no idea I was walking into a trap. The next few weeks passed in a blur of preparation. I went to every department store in Portland looking for a dress that would be appropriate for a black tie event, but still within my budget. Everything that looked suitable cost more than my monthly grocery budget. I finally found a navy blue dress at a consignment shop. It was elegant enough, simple but dignified. I bought new shoes that pinched my feet but looked expensive. I made an appointment at a salon for the day of the event. I wanted everything to be perfect. 3 days before the ceremony, my phone rang again. Marcus. Mom, I need to talk to you about something. What is it, sweetheart? Is everything okay? Yeah, it's fine. It's just Vanessa was thinking. She wants to make sure you understand the seating arrangement. There's going to be a special section for immediate family near the front. But since you and I haven't been that close lately, she thought it might be better if you sat further back. You know, so it doesn't look weird in the photos. I felt like I'd been slapped. Further back, away from my own son during his vow renewal. I'm your mother, Marcus. Where else would I sit but with family? I know, but Vanessa's parents are sitting in the front row. Her siblings, some of our close friends. It's just going to be a specific arrangement, and Vanessa really cares about how it looks. She spent months planning this. How it looks, I repeated slowly. Marcus, do you hear yourself right now? You're asking me to sit in the back at my own son's ceremony because your wife cares about appearances. Mom, don't make this difficult. It's one day. Just let Vanessa have this, okay? She's been so stressed about the planning. I don't want to fight with you about it. I closed my eyes, trying to control the hurt that was rising in my throat. Fine, Marcus. I'll sit wherever you want me to sit. Thanks, Mom. I knew you'd understand. See you Saturday. After he hung up, I sat in my apartment staring at the dress hanging on my closet door. Part of me wanted to call him back and say I wasn't coming. That I had more dignity than to be shoved in the back like an embarrassing relative they had to tolerate. But another part of me, the part that still remembered rocking him to sleep as a baby, teaching him to ride a bike, cheering at his soccer games, that part couldn't give up. Maybe if I went, if I showed up and played by their rules, maybe Marcus would see how much I loved him. Maybe we could start over. I was wrong about everything. The day of the ceremony arrived gray and drizzly. I'd spent the morning at the salon having my hair styled and my makeup done professionally for the first time in years. The woman in the mirror looked elegant, put together, exactly the kind of mother who wouldn't embarrass anyone. I drove to the Riverside estate, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The venue was stunning. A sprawling property with manicured gardens and a massive white tent set up overlooking the river. Luxury cars filled the parking area. I found a spot for my old Honda between a Mercedes and a BMW, feeling completely out of place already. As I walked toward the entrance, I saw other guests arriving. Women in designer dresses dripping with jewelry. Men in expensive suits. Everyone looked like they belonged in a magazine spread. I smoothed down my consignment store dress and took a deep breath. A young woman with a clipboard stood at the entrance checking names. Name, please. Margaret Chen. She scanned her list. Oh, yes. You're seated in Section C, Row 12. She handed me a program. Ceremony starts in 20 minutes. Section C, Row 12. I walked into the tent and immediately understood what that meant. The tent was divided into clear sections. Section A was at the front. Plush chairs with white cushions, crystal chandeliers hanging overhead. That's where Vanessa's family sat. Section B was slightly behind them, still nice but not quite as luxurious. And then there was Section C. Metal folding chairs. No cushions, no decorations. The furthest possible distance from where the ceremony would take place. I'd been put with the random +1s and distant acquaintances, people who weren't really important enough to matter. I stood there, program clutched in my hand, feeling the full weight of the humiliation. This wasn't about seating arrangements or photos. This was intentional. This was Vanessa's way of putting me in my place, and Marcus had gone along with it. I could have left right then. Should have left, but I'd come this far. I made my way to row 12 and sat down. Around me were people I didn't know. A couple who spent the entire time scrolling on their phones. An elderly man who fell asleep before the ceremony even started. No one talked to anyone. We were the forgotten section, the people who didn't matter. Music started playing and everyone stood. I watched as Marcus walked down the aisle looking handsome in his tuxedo. My son. The boy I'd raised alone after his father died when he was 6. The boy I'd worked 2 jobs to support. The boy I'd sacrificed everything for. He didn't look at Section C, didn't search for me in the crowd. His eyes were fixed forward on Vanessa, who was making her entrance in a dress that probably cost more than my car. The ceremony began. I couldn't hear much from where I was sitting. The acoustics were terrible in the back. I caught fragments of their vows, promises of love and devotion. Laughter from the front sections at jokes I couldn't hear. I stood there feeling invisible, forgotten, unimportant. Then came the moment that changed everything. The officiant spoke into the microphone. Marcus and Vanessa wanted to take a moment to thank the people who made them who they are today, to honor the family that shaped them. Vanessa spoke first, her voice amplified for everyone to hear. I want to thank my parents Robert and Christine for their endless love and support, for teaching me what a strong marriage looks like, for giving me everything I needed to become the woman I am today. She gestured to the front row where her parents sat beaming. They stood and everyone applauded. Then Marcus took the microphone. I felt a flutter of hope. Maybe this was it. Maybe he'd acknowledge me after all. Maybe being here would mean something. And I want to thank Vanessa's parents as well, Robert and Christine. You've been more than in-laws. You've been the parents I needed. The family I chose. You showed me what real support looks like, what it means to be there for someone unconditionally. My heart stopped. The tent went silent, except for the sound of my own breathing. He continued. Growing up, I didn't always have that. I didn't have parents who could give me the life I deserved. But you welcomed me into your family and gave me everything I was missing. You taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up. And you've always shown up. I felt the eyes of Section C turning toward me. People who'd figured out who I was. The mother who apparently hadn't shown up, hadn't given her son the life he deserved. I wanted to stand up and scream. Wanted to tell everyone about the double shifts I'd worked to pay for his college, the times I'd skipped meals so he could have new shoes, the years I'd spent alone supporting him after his father died. But I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I just sat there as my son publicly erased me from his life story, as he thanked his in-laws for being the parents he'd needed while I sat 12 rows back among the people who didn't matter. The ceremony continued, but I didn't hear any of it. I was too busy planning my exit. I'd wait until the recessional, slip out during the commotion, go home and try to forget this had ever happened. But then something inside me shifted. No. I wasn't going to slink away. I wasn't going to let them humiliate me and walk away quietly. I was going to stay for the reception. I was going to hold my head high, and I was going to make sure Marcus understood exactly what he'd done. The reception was held in an adjacent building, a grand ballroom with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. Round tables were set up, each with elaborate centerpieces and place cards. I found my name at table 19. Again, the furthest table from the head table where Marcus and Vanessa sat. The forgotten section. I sat down next to a woman I didn't know who introduced herself as someone's co-worker. We made polite small talk, but I barely registered what she was saying. My mind was racing. Should I confront Marcus privately? Should I leave before dinner? Should I cause a scene? Then I saw him. Marcus was making rounds greeting guests at each table, working his way from the front of the room toward the back. He'd get to table 19 eventually. I'd have my chance to speak to him. 20 minutes later, he arrived at our table. He went around shaking hands, thanking people for coming. When he got to me, his smile faltered for just a second. "Hey, Mom. Glad you could make it. You enjoying yourself?" I looked up at my son, this man I'd created and raised and loved more than my own life, and I spoke calmly, quietly, so only he could hear. "No, Marcus. I'm not enjoying myself. Actually, I'm sitting here wondering how I raised someone who could invite his mother to an event just to humiliate her. His jaw tightened. I don't know what you're talking about, don't you? The back row. The speech thanking your in-laws for being the parents you needed while I sat there having given up everything for you. This whole thing was designed to put me in my place, wasn't it? Mom, you're being dramatic. Vanessa wanted a specific seating arrangement. And that speech was about appreciating her family. It wasn't about you, wasn't it? Then why did you mention not having parents who gave you the life you deserved? Who exactly were you talking about, Marcus? He glanced around, making sure no one else was listening. Look, I don't want to do this here. If you're going to cause a scene, maybe you should just leave. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. You know what, Marcus? You're right. I should leave. But before I do, I want you to remember something. When you were 6 years old and your father died, I held you every night while you cried. When you were 12 and you wanted to go to that expensive soccer camp, I worked overtime for 3 months to pay for it. When you were 18 and you got into college but didn't have enough scholarship money, I took out loans. I'm still paying off to make sure you could go. I gave you everything I had, everything I was. And you just stood up in front of 200 people and told them I wasn't enough. Marcus's face had gone pale. Several people at nearby tables were starting to notice. Mom, please keep your voice down. Why, Marcus? Are you embarrassed? Are you worried about what these people will think? Because I spent 30 years being embarrassed about not having enough money, about driving an old car and wearing secondhand clothes and living in a small apartment. And you know what? I'm done being embarrassed. I'm done apologizing for not being wealthy enough to meet your new wife's standards. You want to erase me from your life, fine. But don't expect me to sit quietly while you do it. I grabbed my purse and walked toward the exit. Behind me, I could hear the murmurs spreading through the reception, people whispering, Vanessa's voice rising in indignation, Marcus calling after me. But I didn't stop. I pushed through the doors and out into the cool evening air. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. I'd just caused exactly the kind of scene I'd promised myself I wouldn't make. But I didn't regret it, not for a second. I made it to my car and sat there for a long moment trying to catch my breath. Then I pulled out my phone. There was someone I needed to call, someone I should have called a long time ago, my sister Linda. We'd been close once but had drifted apart over the years, different lives, different cities. But Linda had always been the strong one, the one who didn't take nonsense from anyone. She picked up on the third ring. Margaret, is everything okay? You never call. Linda, I need to tell you what just happened, and I need to know if you'll help me with something. Anything. What do you need? I told her everything. The invitation, the seating arrangement, Marcus's speech, my confrontation with him. By the time I finished, Linda was silent for a long moment. That little entitled brat. Sorry, I know he's your son, but what the hell? He's always been weak when it comes to women. Vanessa clearly has him wrapped around her finger. But to treat you like that, his own mother, to humiliate you publicly like that. No, that's not okay, I know, and I'm done pretending it is. Good. So what do you need from me? I took a deep breath. Marcus and Vanessa are having a post-ceremony brunch tomorrow, at her parents' house, for family and close friends. I'm obviously not invited, but I was thinking, what if I showed up anyway? With you? Linda laughed. Oh, I like where this is going. We're going to crash their bougie brunch. I want to have a conversation with Marcus. A real one. Without Vanessa controlling everything, without her family there to back him up. I want him to look me in the eye and tell me why he thinks what he did was okay. And I want you there because I need someone on my side. Someone who won't let them gaslight me into thinking I'm overreacting. I'm in. Absolutely 100% in. What time should I pick you up? The brunch starts at 11. Pick me up at 10:30. And Linda, thank you. For what? For being the family that actually shows up. The next morning I woke up with that strange mixture of nervousness and determination that comes before you do something you know will be uncomfortable but necessary. Linda arrived at 10:30, exactly driving her pristine BMW. My sister had done well for herself, married to a successful architect, 3 grown kids who actually liked her. She'd always been better at life than me, better at setting boundaries, better at demanding respect, things I'd never learned how to do. "You ready for this?" she asked as I climbed into the passenger seat. "Ready as I'll ever be." "You look good, Margaret. That's a great dress." It was the same dress I'd worn to the ceremony. I hadn't bought anything new, didn't see the point. Linda, on the other hand, wore an elegant cream-colored pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She looked like someone who belonged in Vanessa's world. That was good. That was strategic. We drove to the address Marcus had mentioned once in passing, a sprawling estate in the West Hills, the kind of place with gates and a circular driveway and professionally landscaped grounds. Old money. The kind that looked down on people like me. Linda pulled up to the gate and pressed the intercom button. "Yes." A woman's voice crackled through the speaker. "We're here for the Chen Brennan brunch. Names, please. Linda Chen and Margaret Chen." There was a pause. "I'm sorry you're not on the guest list." Linda leaned closer to the intercom. "That's fine. We're family. Margaret is Marcus's mother. I'm her sister. We're here to speak with Marcus. It'll just take a few minutes." Another longer pause. "Please wait one moment." We sat there idling at the gate. I could feel my heart racing. Linda reached over and squeezed my hand. "They're going to try to intimidate you. Vanessa's parents. Vanessa. Maybe even Marcus. Don't let them. You have every right to be here. You have every right to demand answers." "I know. But what if Marcus refuses to talk to me? What if he tells security to remove us? Then we'll leave. But at least you'll know you tried. At least you'll know you stood up for yourself." The intercom crackled again. "You may proceed to the main house. Someone will meet you there." The gate swung open and Linda drove through. The driveway wound through perfectly manicured gardens, past a tennis court and a pool house that was bigger than my apartment. The main house loomed ahead, a massive colonial-style mansion with white columns and black shutters, wealth on full display. We parked and walked to the front door. It opened before we could knock. A man in his 60s stood there. Vanessa's father, Robert, tall, silver-haired, expensive suit even on a Sunday morning. He did not look pleased to see us. "Mrs. Chen, this is a private family event. You weren't invited. I'm aware of that, Mr. Brennan. But I need to speak with my son. And since he won't return my calls, I decided to come in person." Robert's expression hardened. "Marcus doesn't want to see you. Not after the scene you caused yesterday. You embarrassed him and Vanessa in front of all their guests." "I embarrassed them." I spoke quietly but firmly. "Your daughter and my son invited me to their ceremony, seated me in the back row, and then publicly thanked you for being better parents than I was. And I'm the one who embarrassed them. Look, I don't know what kind of relationship you have with your son, but this is not the time or place to work it out. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "I'm not leaving until I speak to Marcus." Linda stepped forward, her presence commanding. "Mr. Brennan, with all due respect, this is between Marcus and his mother. We're not here to cause problems. We just want 10 minutes of his time. Then we'll leave and you can get back to your brunch." "Who are you?" "I'm Linda Chen, Margaret's sister, and I'm here to make sure this conversation happens, because what your family did to my sister yesterday was cruel and unacceptable, and someone needs to tell Marcus that." Robert looked between us, clearly trying to decide how to handle the situation. Finally, he stepped aside. "Fine, 10 minutes. But if you cause any kind of disruption, I'm calling the police." We followed him through the house. It was exactly what I expected. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, original artwork on the walls. Everything screamed money. We passed a formal dining room where I could see guests seated around a long table. They all turned to stare as we walked by. I recognized some faces from the ceremony yesterday, Vanessa's siblings, some of Marcus and Vanessa's friends, and at the head of the table, Marcus and Vanessa themselves. Robert led us to a study off the main hall and gestured for us to wait. "I'll get Marcus." He left, closing the door behind him. Linda and I stood there, surrounded by leather-bound books and expensive furniture. "This is insane," Linda whispered. "These people are absolutely insane." I nodded, unable to speak. My throat felt tight. A few minutes later, the door opened. Marcus walked in alone. He looked tired, circles under his eyes. His jaw set in that stubborn way I recognized from when he was a teenager. "Mom, what are you doing here? I need to talk to you. We talked yesterday, and you made it very clear what you think of me." "Marcus, I made it clear that I won't tolerate being disrespected. There's a difference." He crossed his arms. "You caused a scene at my vow renewal. You ruined what was supposed to be a perfect day." "I ruined it," I repeated slowly. "Marcus, do you have any idea how it felt to sit in the back row while you thanked your in-laws for being better parents than me? While you told 200 people that you didn't have the life you deserved growing up? Do you have any concept of how much that hurt? You're being oversensitive. That speech wasn't about you. It was about appreciating Robert and Christine. Then why did you say you didn't have parents who could give you the life you deserved? Who were you talking about, if not me?" He hesitated. "I was just being grateful for what they've done for me. That doesn't mean I was attacking you. It doesn't mean that. But it did mean that. Whether you intended it or not, that's exactly what you did." "And the seating arrangement." "Marcus, the back row, among people who didn't know anyone. You deliberately put me as far away from you as possible. Vanessa planned the seating. Take it up with her. No, Marcus, you don't get to hide behind Vanessa. You're a grown man. You could have told her that your mother should sit with family. You could have stood up for me. But you didn't, because somewhere along the way you started seeing me as an embarrassment." Linda stepped forward. "I'm Linda, Margaret's sister. We've never met, but I need to say something to you, Marcus. Who are you to come into my in-laws' house and lecture me? I'm your aunt, and someone needs to tell you that the way you're treating your mother is disgusting. This woman raised you alone after your father died. She worked herself to exhaustion to give you opportunities. She sacrificed everything for you, and you repay her by erasing her from your life story because she's not wealthy enough to fit into your new wife's world. That's not what happened. That's exactly what happened, and deep down, you know it." Marcus's face flushed red. "You don't know anything about my life. You haven't been around. I know what your mother has told me. And I know that what you did yesterday was cruel and unforgivable. You wanted to humiliate her, to put her in her place. And it worked. But the only person you should be embarrassed about is yourself." The door opened and Vanessa walked in, her expression icy. "What is going on in here?" "Robert said you had 10 minutes. That was 15 minutes ago." Marcus turned to her. "They're just leaving." "No, we're not," I said, finding my voice again. "Vanessa, you've never liked me. I've always known that. But I need to understand why. What did I ever do to you to deserve this treatment?" Vanessa laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "You really want to know. You're everything I don't want Marcus to be reminded of. You're the struggling single mother with the humble job and the small apartment. You represent a life of lack, of limitation, and I worked very hard to build a life of abundance and success with Marcus. I don't need constant reminders of where he came from." I stared at her. "You think I'm a reminder of lack. I'm a reminder of love, Vanessa. I'm a reminder that Marcus was wanted and cherished and fought for. I'm a reminder that money isn't everything. That's exactly the kind of mindset I'm talking about," Vanessa said dismissively. "That poor person mentality. Money isn't everything, but it's certainly important. And frankly, I don't want my children growing up with a grandmother who teaches them that it's noble to struggle. I'd rather they learn from people who know how to succeed." Linda stepped between us. "You arrogant, entitled witch. Do you hear yourself? You're literally saying that Marcus's mother isn't good enough to be around your hypothetical future children because she's not rich. What kind of person thinks that way? A smart person, Vanessa shot back. Someone who wants the best for her family. I don't have to justify my choices to you people. This is my home. Well, technically, my parents' home. And you need to leave now. Marcus stood there saying nothing, just watching as his wife insulted his mother. That silence spoke louder than any words could have. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and I realized something heartbreaking. I'd lost him. Not just recently, but years ago. Probably around the time he met Vanessa. He'd made his choice. He'd chosen wealth and status and his wife's approval over his own mother. And nothing I said or did would change that. Okay, I said quietly. We'll leave. But Marcus, I need you to hear something. One day you might have children. And if you do, I hope they treat you better than you've treated me. I hope they remember everything you sacrificed for them. I hope they honor you instead of erasing you. Because this, what you've done to me, you'll carry this for the rest of your life, whether you admit it or not. I turned and walked toward the door. Linda followed. Behind us, Vanessa said something to Marcus. I didn't catch the words, but I heard the tone. Satisfied. Victorious. We made it back to Linda's car and drove away from that mansion in silence. It wasn't until we were halfway back to my apartment that I started crying. Not loud sobs, just quiet tears sliding down my face. Linda reached over and took my hand. I'm so sorry, Margaret. I'm sorry your son turned out to be such a disappointment. He wasn't always like this. I know, but he is now. And you need to accept that. You did everything right. You were a wonderful mother. What he's become, that's on him, not you. But it still hurts. Of course it hurts. But you know what? You showed up. You confronted him. You told him the truth. That takes courage. Most people would have just accepted the treatment and stayed silent. You didn't. You stood up for yourself. And I'm proud of you for that. We pulled up to my building and Linda turned to me. What are you going to do now? I thought about that question. What was I going to do? Spend the rest of my life grieving the relationship I'd lost with Marcus? Keep trying to force my way back into his life? Or accept reality and move forward? I'm going to let him go, I said finally. I'm going to stop chasing someone who doesn't want to be caught. I'm going to focus on the people who actually value me. Like you. Linda smiled. Like me. We should see each other more often. Not just in crisis situations. I'd like that. Over the next few weeks, I didn't hear from Marcus. Not a call. Not a text. Not an apology. Nothing. And honestly, I didn't expect to. He'd made his position clear. I was an embarrassment, a reminder of a life he wanted to forget. And Vanessa had made sure there was no room for me in their perfect world. But something interesting happened. Other people started reaching out to me. My cousin Rachel, who I hadn't spoken to in years, called after hearing about what happened from Linda. She'd gone through something similar with her daughter. We talked for hours, comparing stories, finding comfort in knowing we weren't alone. My former colleague from the library, Sarah, invited me to join her book club. I started spending Tuesday evenings with a group of women who actually enjoyed my company, who valued my opinions, who didn't care that I drove an old car or lived in a small apartment. I reconnected with old friends I'd neglected while trying so hard to maintain a relationship with Marcus. Friends who reminded me that I was more than just someone's mother. I was Margaret, a person with interests and humor and worth that existed independent of my son. And slowly, the wound started to heal. Not completely. I don't think that kind of betrayal ever fully heals. But it scabbed over, became something I could live with. 3 months after the vow renewal, I was having coffee with Linda when she showed me something on her phone. It's Marcus and Vanessa. They posted this yesterday. She handed me the phone. It was an Instagram post, a professional photo of Marcus and Vanessa standing in front of an enormous house. The caption read, "Just closed on our dream home. 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, and room to grow our family. Blessed beyond measure." Linda watched my face carefully. "You okay?" "I'm okay," I said, honestly. "Good for them, I guess. You don't feel anything. Seeing them celebrate while I'm what, Linda?" "While I'm living my small, humble life in my small, humble apartment." "No, I don't feel angry about it. I feel sad that my son has become the kind of person who measures his worth by the size of his house. But that's his problem, not mine." Linda smiled. "You've really changed, you know. Since all this happened, you seem stronger, more sure of yourself. I had to learn how to be. Spent my whole life trying to be enough for other people. Trying to prove my worth. Trying to make Marcus proud. I finally realized I can't make someone value me if they've decided I'm not valuable. All I can do is value myself. That's very wise. It's very painful, is what it is. But yes, I guess it's wise too. A few days later, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello? Mrs. Chen. This is Diana Brennan, Vanessa's sister." I hesitated. Diana had been at the Vow Renewal, sitting in Section A with the important people. Why was she calling me? "What can I do for you, Diana? I just wanted to reach out to you privately. I was at the ceremony. I saw what happened. And I've been thinking about it ever since. I wanted you to know that not everyone in our family agreed with how you were treated." "What do you mean?" "My parents can be very focused on appearances and status. And Vanessa, well, she's always been the golden child. She gets what she wants. But I saw where they put you. I heard Marcus's speech. And I thought it was wrong. I appreciate you saying that. There's something else," Diana continued. "Something I think you should know. Last week, Vanessa and Marcus got into a huge fight. I don't know all the details, but I heard Vanessa telling my mother that Marcus has been depressed lately, that he's been distant and withdrawn. And my mother asked if it had anything to do with what happened at the Vow Renewal. With you." "What did Vanessa say?" "She said Marcus was feeling guilty. That he knows he shouldn't have said what he said, but he's too proud to admit it, too worried about what I'll think if he tries to reconcile with you." My breath caught. He feels guilty. According to Vanessa, yes. But she also said she's been working hard to make sure he doesn't reach out to you. She told him that if he lets you back into his life, you'll just cause more problems. That you'll try to drive a wedge between them. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know the truth, Mrs. Chen. Because I watched my sister systematically isolate Marcus from his family and friends who don't meet her standards. And I think it's wrong. I don't know what you want to do with this information, but I thought you should have it. Thank you, Diana. I really appreciate you calling. After we hung up, I sat there processing what she'd told me. Marcus felt guilty. Some small part of him knew what he'd done was wrong, but he was too afraid of Vanessa to do anything about it. I could have felt vindicated by that information, could have felt satisfied knowing that he was suffering consequences for his choices. But instead, I just felt sad. Sad that my son had become so controlled by someone else that he couldn't even apologize to his own mother. Sad that he'd chosen a life where image mattered more than integrity. That evening, I wrote Marcus a letter. Not an email or a text, but an actual handwritten letter. I told him everything I'd been feeling. The hurt. The disappointment. The grief of losing him. But I also told him something else. Marcus, I want you to know that despite everything, I still love you. I don't like the person you've become, but I love the person you were. The boy I raised. And if you ever decide that you want a real relationship with me, not one where I'm hidden away or erased, but a real, authentic relationship where we can be honest with each other, I'll be here. But I won't chase you anymore. I won't beg for your attention or your time. I won't accept being treated as less than I am. The ball is in your court now. You know where to find me. Love, always, Mom. I mailed the letter the next day. Didn't expect a response and didn't get one. Life continued. I started volunteering at a literacy program teaching adults how to read. Found purpose in helping people who society had overlooked, just like I'd been overlooked. I took a watercolor painting class and discovered I had a talent for it. Started selling small pieces at a local craft market. Nothing that would make me rich, but enough to feel productive and creative. I celebrated my 67th birthday surrounded by friends. Linda threw me a party at her house. 20 people showed up. People who actually cared about me, who valued my presence. It was the best birthday I'd had in years. No Marcus, no card from him, no acknowledgement at all. But I was okay. Really, truly okay. Then, 6 months after the vow renewal, something unexpected happened. I was at the grocery store on a Tuesday afternoon when I literally ran into someone with my cart. "I'm so sorry," I said, looking up. Then I froze. It was Vanessa's mother, Christine. She looked different than she had at the ceremony. Less polished, tired. Her hair wasn't perfectly styled. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, no designer labels visible. She recognized me immediately. Her expression shifted from surprise to something else. Discomfort, maybe, or guilt. "Margaret." "Hello, Christine." We stood there in the produce section, both of us clearly wanting to be anywhere else. "How are you?" she asked finally. The question seemed genuine, not just polite. "I'm well. And you?" She hesitated. Then, to my complete shock, her eyes filled with tears. "Can we talk? Somewhere private?" 15 minutes later, we were sitting in a quiet corner of the store's small cafe. Christine wrapped her hands around a coffee cup and stared into it like she was trying to find words. "I'm sorry," she said finally, "for what happened at the vow renewal, for how we treated you, for how my daughter treated you. I didn't expect that. Thank you. It's just..." She continued, "Vanessa is my daughter and I love her, but she's always been difficult. Always needed to be the best, to have the best, to project this image of perfection. And I enabled it. My husband and I both did. We gave her everything she wanted and never taught her that other people's feelings mattered. I appreciate you telling me this, but why now? Why are you apologizing 6 months later?" "Because everything is falling apart," Christine said, her voice breaking. "Marcus and Vanessa are getting divorced." I felt the air leave my lungs. What? Vanessa had an affair with Marcus's business partner. He found out 3 weeks ago. The whole thing imploded. They're selling the house, splitting everything. It's a disaster. I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt vindicated. The perfect life they'd projected on Instagram had been a lie. But another part of me just felt sad for Marcus. Sad that he'd sacrificed his relationship with me for a marriage that was already broken. How is Marcus? Christine wiped her eyes. Not good. He moved into a hotel, lost the business because his partner was sleeping with his wife and he can't work with him anymore. He's depressed, angry. And I think he's finally realizing what he gave up. What do you mean? You, his mother. Christine looked directly at me. He told Vanessa he wanted to reach out to you, to apologize, and she forbid it. Told him that if he contacted you, she'd make the divorce even messier, that she'd tell everyone he was an ungrateful son who abandoned his poor mother, use it against him publicly. So he stayed silent. But now that it's all falling apart anyway, he's been talking about you. Asking Robert and me if we thought you'd ever forgive him. What did you tell him? I told him that mothers love their children no matter what, but that forgiveness has to be earned, that he needs to actually try, to show up, to do the work. That's why I'm here, Margaret. Not to make excuses for him, but to tell you that if he does reach out, I hope you'll at least hear him out. He made terrible mistakes. He hurt you in ways that are probably unforgivable. But he's paying for those mistakes now. And he's alone. and I think he finally understands what he lost. I sat there absorbing this information. Marcus was getting divorced. His perfect life had crumbled, and now, suddenly, he wanted his mother back. How convenient, I said. Now that his wife is gone and his life is falling apart, suddenly, he remembers I exist. Christine nodded. I know how it looks, but I also know that sometimes people need to lose everything to realize what actually mattered. I'm not asking you to forgive him. I'm just asking you to keep an open mind if he reaches out. I'll think about it. That's all I can promise. That's fair. Christine finished her coffee and stood to leave. Then she turned back. Margaret. Yes. For what it's worth, I think Vanessa was wrong about you. I think Marcus was lucky to have you as a mother. And I'm sorry we didn't see that sooner. She walked away, leaving me sitting there with my thoughts swirling. 2 weeks later, my doorbell rang at 8 in the evening. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I looked through the peephole, I saw him. Marcus. He looked terrible, thinner than I'd ever seen him. Unshaven. Dark circles under his eyes. His clothes wrinkled like he'd been wearing them for days. I stood there for a long moment, debating whether to open the door, whether I was ready for this conversation. Finally, I opened it. Marcus. Mom. His voice cracked on the word. Can I come in? I stepped aside, and he walked into my small apartment. The place he'd probably never want his fancy friends to see. The place that represented everything he'd tried to distance himself from. He stood in my living room looking lost, broken. Sit down, I said quietly. He sat on my old couch, the one I'd bought secondhand 15 years ago. And he started crying. Not quiet tears, full-body sobs, the kind of crying that comes from deep pain and regret. I let him cry. Didn't try to comfort him or stop him, just sat in my chair and waited. Eventually the sobs subsided. He wiped his face with his sleeve like he used to do when he was a little boy. I'm so sorry, Mom. I know. Christine told me she ran into you. Told me you knew about the divorce. Everything. It's more than that. I'm sorry for all of it. For the vow renewal. For that speech. For how I treated you. For choosing Vanessa over you. For being the worst son in the world. You weren't the worst son. You were a son who made bad choices. There's a difference. I don't know how it happened. He continued. I don't know when I became the kind of person who would humiliate his own mother. Vanessa would say things about you, about your apartment, your car, the way you dressed. And instead of defending you, I started seeing you through her eyes, started being embarrassed by the things that made you who you are, your humility, your simple life, the fact that you never cared about impressing anyone. I should have stood up for you. I should have told Vanessa that you were my mother and she needed to respect you. But I was weak. I wanted her approval. I wanted her family's approval. And I was willing to sacrifice you to get it. Why? The question came out quieter than I intended. Why was their approval more important than mine? Because they had everything I thought I wanted, Marcus said. Money, status, success. I grew up watching you struggle, watching you work 2 jobs and still barely make ends meet. And I told myself that I'd never live like that I'd build a different life, a better life. And when I met Vanessa and her family, I thought I'd found it. The life where I didn't have to worry about money, where I could have nice things, where I could be someone important. But I didn't realize that in chasing that life, I was becoming someone I didn't recognize. Someone who valued money more than people, status more than integrity. Someone who would hurt the person who loved him most just to fit in with people who only cared about appearances. I listened to him, heard the genuine remorse in his voice, but I also knew that remorse wasn't enough. Words were easy, change was hard. Marcus, I appreciate you coming here. I appreciate the apology. But I need to know something. If Vanessa hadn't cheated on you, If your marriage was still intact, would you be here right now? Would you be apologizing? Or would you still be posting perfect photos on Instagram and pretending I didn't exist? He was quiet for a long time. Then he said the most honest thing he'd said in years. I don't know. I want to say yes. I want to believe I would have eventually seen the truth. But honestly, I don't know. And that's what I have to live with. The fact that it took losing everything to make me realize what actually mattered. I nodded. At least you're being honest. That's something. Can you forgive me? He asked. His eyes desperate. Please, Mom. I know I don't deserve it, but can you forgive me? I thought about that question. Could I forgive him? Did I want to? I don't know, Marcus. What you did, how you treated me, that's not something that gets fixed with one apology. You erased me from your life. You made me feel worthless. You chose people who didn't actually care about you over the person who gave up everything for you. That kind of hurt doesn't just disappear because you're sorry. I know. So what are you asking from me? I'm asking for a chance, to prove that I've changed, to show you that I understand what I did wrong, to rebuild our relationship, to be your son again, not the person I became, but the person you raised me to be. That's going to take time, Marcus, a lot of time, and it's going to require more than words. It's going to require action, consistency, proof that you've actually learned something. I'll do whatever it takes, he said quickly. I'll come visit you every week. I'll call you. I'll show up. I'll prove to you that I mean this. Okay. But Marcus, I need you to understand something. I'm not going to be the mother who accepts crumbs anymore. I'm not going to sit in the back row of your life hoping you'll notice me. Either I matter to you or I don't. And if you decide that rebuilding this relationship is too hard or too inconvenient, I need you to tell me. Don't string me along. Don't make promises you can't keep. Be honest with me, even if the truth is that you can't do this. I will be honest, I promise. And I do want to do this, Mom. I want you back in my life. Not because I'm alone and have nowhere else to turn, but because I finally understand what I lost. You're my mom. You're the person who loved me when no one else did, who believed in me, who sacrificed for me, and I threw that away for people who never actually cared about me. I'm not going to make that mistake again. We talked for another hour. He told me about the affair, about discovering texts between Vanessa and his business partner, about the confrontation, the anger, the betrayal. He told me about losing the business, about moving into a cheap hotel room, about calling his former friends only to realize they'd all been Vanessa's friends, really, that none of them wanted anything to do with him now that he wasn't part of the golden couple anymore. He'd lost everything, his wife, his business, his home, his social circle, everything he'd valued more than me. And now he was starting over, alone, humbled, finally understanding what actually mattered. When he left that night, I felt conflicted. Part of me wanted to believe him, wanted to think that this was real change, that my son had finally learned his lesson. But another part of me was cautious, guarded, afraid of being hurt again. Linda called me the next day. I heard Marcus came to see you. Diana told me. Are you okay? I'm okay, I think. Did you forgive him? I don't know. I told him I'd give him a chance to prove himself. But I'm not rushing into anything. Good. Don't let him off easy. He needs to earn his way back into your life. I know. But Linda? What? Part of me still wants to believe he's genuinely sorry, that he's changed. That's because you're a good mother. That's not a bad thing. Just be careful. Protect yourself. Over the next few weeks, Marcus did exactly what he promised. He called me 3 times a week. He came to visit every Sunday. He brought groceries knowing my budget was tight. He fixed things around my apartment. He showed up, consistently, without excuses. He didn't ask me to meet him at fancy restaurants or places where he might run into people he knew. He came to my world, sat in my small apartment, ate meals at my tiny kitchen table, and he seemed genuinely okay with it. like he was finally seeing the value in simplicity, in authenticity. One Sunday afternoon, about 2 months after his first apology, we were sitting on my balcony. I'd made sandwiches, and we were eating in comfortable silence. Then Marcus said something that surprised me. "I'm in therapy." "Really?" "Yeah, twice a week. I'm working through a lot of stuff. The way I grew up watching you struggle. The resentment I had about not having the same advantages as other kids. The way I let Vanessa manipulate me. The way I became obsessed with status and money. My therapist says I have to understand why I made those choices before I can truly change. What have you learned? That I was angry at you, not because you did anything wrong, but because I blamed you for not being able to give me the life I wanted. And that was completely unfair. You gave me everything you had, more than most kids get. Love, support, sacrifice. But I was so focused on what I didn't have that I couldn't see what I did have. And I'm sorry for that, Mom. I'm sorry I made you feel like you weren't enough, when the truth is, you were always more than enough. It was me who wasn't enough. I wasn't grateful enough, wasn't mature enough, wasn't good enough to deserve you. I felt tears prick my eyes. That means a lot, Marcus, to hear you say that. I mean it. I really do. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be the son you deserved. We sat there watching the sun set over the city. My small balcony, with its cheap plastic chairs, suddenly felt like the most important place in the world. Because we were here together, really together, for the first time in years. 3 months after Marcus's first apology, he called me with an invitation. "Mom, there's something I want you to come to." "What is it?" "I'm speaking at a men's group at my church, about accountability and making amends. And I'm going to talk about what I did to you, about the vow renewal, about everything. And I want you there, because I want people to see you, to meet you, to understand who I hurt and why what I did was so wrong. You don't have to do that, Marcus, I know, but I want to. I need to. Will you come?" I went. The church was small and unassuming, nothing like the grand venue where his vow renewal had been. About 40 men sat in folding chairs in the community room, regular guys, some in work clothes, some in jeans, nobody dressed to impress. Marcus stood at the front and told them everything. He talked about the vow renewal, about seating me in the back row, about the speech where he thanked his in-laws for being better parents, about how he'd valued money and status over his own mother. He didn't paint himself as a victim, didn't make excuses, just owned what he'd done. And at the end, he asked me to stand. "I want you all to meet my mom, Margaret. She's the woman I'm talking about, the woman who raised me alone, who worked herself to exhaustion for me, who I repaid by humiliating her, and who somehow still gave me a second chance. Mom, will you come up here?" I walked to the front, feeling dozens of eyes on me. Marcus put his arm around my shoulders. "This is the most important person in my life, and I almost lost her because I was too stupid to see what I had. Don't make the same mistake I did. Don't wait until you've lost everything to appreciate the people who actually love you." After the meeting, several men came up to me, shook my hand, thanked me for raising a son who was humble enough to admit his mistakes, told me I should be proud of him. And for the first time in years, I felt it. Pride. Real, genuine pride in Marcus. Not because of his successes or achievements, but because he'd done the hardest thing anyone can do. He'd looked at himself honestly, admitted he was wrong, and changed. 6 months after the vow renewal, I got an unexpected phone call. From Vanessa. "Margaret, this is Vanessa. Can we talk?" I was so surprised I almost dropped the phone. "What do you want, Vanessa? I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I needed to call you. I've been thinking a lot lately, about everything that happened, about how I treated you, and I wanted to say, I'm sorry." I was silent, waiting for the catch, the manipulation, but she continued. "I was wrong, about you, about Marcus, about everything." I was so obsessed with projecting this image of success that I destroyed everything real in my life. My marriage, my relationship with my sister Diana, my own sense of self. And you were right about what you said at the brunch. I am an arrogant, entitled witch. I know this doesn't change anything. It doesn't undo what I did. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see how wrong I was. I don't forgive you, Vanessa. I appreciate the apology, but I don't forgive you. That's fair. I don't forgive myself either. Take care of yourself. And for what it's worth, Marcus is lucky to have you. He always was. He just didn't see it. She hung up. I stood there processing the conversation. Vanessa had apologized, admitted she was wrong. It didn't change the past, didn't erase the hurt. But it was something. A year after the vow renewal, Marcus invited me to his new apartment. It wasn't the mansion he'd shared with Vanessa. It was a modest 2-bedroom in a regular neighborhood. Affordable, simple, real. He'd started a new job, not as glamorous as the business he'd lost, but stable. He'd made new friends, people who valued him for who he was, not what he had. He'd rebuilt his life, and this time he'd built it on a foundation of authenticity instead of image. We had dinner together, just the two of us, spaghetti and meatballs, the meal I'd made him every Sunday when he was growing up. Mom, he said as we were cleaning up, I know I say this a lot, but thank you. For giving me another chance, for not giving up on me, for teaching me what really matters. You're welcome, sweetheart. I mean it. A lot of people wouldn't have forgiven me, wouldn't have let me back in. But you did, and it changed my life. You changed your own life, Marcus. I just gave you the opportunity. We sat on his small balcony, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Real peace. The kind that comes from reconciliation, from healing, from bridges rebuilt stronger than they were before. I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to my story. If you've made it this far, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever been humiliated by someone you love? How did you handle it? Have you ever had to decide whether to forgive someone who deeply hurt you? Drop your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe for more real-life stories. Remember, standing up for yourself isn't cruel. Demanding respect isn't selfish. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is hold people accountable until they choose to change. I learned that the hard way, but I learned it well. And now, at 67 years old, I have my son back. Not the son who was ashamed of me, but the son I raised. The one who values love over money, integrity over image, authenticity over approval. That vow renewal ceremony was supposed to be my humiliation, my final dismissal from my son's life. But it became something else entirely. It became the moment I found my voice. The moment I demanded respect. The moment I stopped accepting treatment I didn't deserve. And ultimately, it became the catalyst that brought my son back to me. Not because I chased him, but because I stood my ground and waited for him to find his way home. Trust me on that.